This is the Andy Pollin Hour on Washington's new home for sports. ESPN 630, the sports capital.
Tony's taking the next few days off, so you got 2 hours of me, or however much of me you want, for the next 3 days. I'll be here till noon, so if you want to pop in, pop out, whatever, I'll be doing 2-hour shows the next 3 days, and then Tony's back on Friday. If you've not heard, Ken Meese, who was a longtime reporter and sports anchor at Channel 9, has passed away. And I want to talk a little bit about him later this hour. I didn't know Ken well, but I knew him a bit, and he was beloved by everybody who knew him. Just a real mensch, a good guy, and as they say, attention needs to be paid. And we'll talk about Ken a little bit later on. But this is now breaking, and it's being widely reported, first reported by J.P. Finley of NBC Sports Washington, and the other beat reporters have confirmed this, that the Commanders are going to retire Sonny Jurgensen's number 9. Now, I don't think it's any coincidence that they're leaking this information on the day that Sonny turns 88 years old. So happy birthday, Sonny. I was fortunate enough in my career to work with him on the air many, many times, and I think he's just such an iconic figure, not just for sports in this town, but among all the people who have ever lived here. I think Sonny Jurgensen is one of the great icons of the Washington, D.C. community. But I was thinking about this and the retirement of his number, and John Keim has put this out. I don't know if any of the other beat reporters have this, but he says it's going to happen for the final game, which is January 8th when they play the Dallas Cowboys. And I look at this in a couple of ways. One, yes, it makes sense to retire Sonny's number on the day that you're playing Dallas, because that's the big rivalry. That's the team that you get most ginned up for is to play Dallas. And Sonny certainly had some big games against Dallas. The first one that comes to mind is the game on Monday Night Football in 1973 when Ken Houston corralled Walt Garrison at the goal line, dragged him down, and the Redskins beat the Cowboys 14-7. There have been other games that Sonny played against the Cowboys, some great games over the years, but it makes sense to retire his number on that day. The problem is the weather's likely to stink. January 8th, you don't know what you're going to get. And the other thing is, you don't know where the team is going to be. If they go into that game and it means something, it means getting the playoffs or winning the division or something like that, that makes it really important. But it's possible they go into this with 5 or 6 wins and it doesn't mean anything, and they just be using Sonny to get people interested in going to the game. But whatever it is, it's an honor that's well-deserved. Certainly, Sonny's number should have been retired. Now, I came of age as a sports fan in 1966. That's really the first memorable year I have of being a fan. I was 7 going on 8 when my father took me to my first baseball game, Washington Senators against the Boston Red Sox at D.C. Stadium. And I remember that well. It's the same feeling that is expressed in the movie City Slickers when they talk about, they're riding the range, and Billy Crystal says the best day of his life is when he goes to Yankee Stadium for the first time with his father, and they walk through the tunnel and they look out on the field. And like Billy Crystal, we only had a black and white television, so to see the field so green is something I vividly remember. And the Senators were a bad team, but they had one star player who wore number 9. His name was Frank Howard. Frank Howard had come over from the Dodgers, and he was a big slugger, 6'7", led the league in home runs a couple of times, and he was their one really marketable star wearing number 9. And then later that year, I went to my first football game with my dad to see the Washington Redskins play, and it was Sonny Jurgensen wearing number 9, and they became my first 2 boyhood heroes. And again, as great fortune struck me, I was able to actually get to know Sonny and work with him over the years. I've met Frank Howard a couple of times. I've interviewed him for a podcast and some other on-air things, but really, a great thrill to live out that fantasy of getting to meet your heroes. So actually, Frank Howard had to give up number 9 in 1969 when Ted Williams became manager of the team. And Ted Williams is in the Hall of Fame and had worn number 9 throughout his career for the Boston Red Sox. So it made sense that Williams would keep number 9 and Howard went to 33. But Sonny wore number 9 for the rest of his career. And for many years, the team had a policy of not retiring numbers. The only number that had been officially retired was Sammy Baugh's 33. Sammy Baugh was the first big star of the franchise after they moved here from Boston in 1937. And in 1950, he was named the greatest pro football player of the first half of the 20th century and was one of the inaugural members of the Pro Football Hall of Fame. You had to retire 33. But there were a bunch of numbers that remained unofficially retired. Jay Bernetti was the equipment manager, and he just wouldn't give them out, and it made sense that he wouldn't. And Sonny's 9 was one of them. Charlie Taylor's 42 was one of them. Larry Brown, who's not in the Hall of Fame, maybe he should be in the Hall of Fame, 43, that wasn't given out. Bobby Mitchell's 49, and then over the years, as others retired, like Darrell Green, the 28 wouldn't be given out, Art Monk, 81, et cetera, et cetera. In 2002, Steve Spurrier comes in, and Jay Bernetti, the equipment guy, is gone. He doesn't know, Spurrier doesn't know anything really about numbers, and he says, Danny Werfel, want to wear 7? Okay, fine. Shane Matthews, want to wear 9? That's fine. They'd worn those numbers before. And they come out on the practice field for, I guess it was minicamp, and people, whoa, wait a minute. What's Theismann's 7 doing out of circulation here? What's Sonny's number 9 doing here? And fortunately, the public prevailed, and Danny Werfel went to number 17, and Shane Matthews wore 6, and the numbers went out of circulation again. However, and this should be recognized, there was a backup tight end on that team named Leonard Stevens, and they issued him number 49, which should have been out of circulation for Bobby Mitchell. And I remember saying things about this on the air many times. I contacted Carl Swanson, who was the PR guy for Dan Snyder at the time, and I said, this is crazy. You can't give out 49. It was totally ignored. They went through the whole season with Leonard Stevens as 49. Sure enough, at the end of the year, Bobby Mitchell had had enough. He had been passed over twice in his efforts to become general manager. He stayed with the team in a front office job, but didn't feel like he was treated properly. And he said the final straw was they gave out my number 49 to a backup player. And he said he didn't want to say anything because he didn't want to embarrass Leonard Stevens. That's the kind of guy Bobby Mitchell was. So years go by. Bobby Mitchell passes away. We have the Black Lives Matter movement, the George Floyd tragedy, all of that. And this organization uses Bobby Mitchell to kind of make a statement, and they officially retire his number long after that should have been done. Last year, they get themselves in a bind over something. I forget exactly what it was. Maybe those the new allegations against Dan Snyder from Tiffany Johnston, and boom, out comes the retirement for Sean Taylor, which they totally botched. Photo ops in front of a porta-john, his number painted on the field while people walked all over it. I mean, just a poor job all around. And so now we have the 4th number to be officially retired, Sonny Jurgensen, long overdue, and someone who I think is maybe the most iconic figure in the history of the organization, because not just because of what he was on the field, a Hall of Fame quarterback and one of the greatest pure passers of all time. It's because of what he did in the radio booth, and most of it right here on AM 630 as part of the team with Frank Herzog and, of course, Sam Huff, Sonny, Sam, and Frank, the iconic trio that did the games for all those years, almost 40 years for Sonny. He retired just before the start of the 2019 season, and a very happy birthday to him today at the age of 88. He's living down in Florida now, and they will retire his number. Reportedly, it's going to be on the last game of the season, which is January 8th when they play the Dallas Cowboys. All right, so that's that. Modern stuff, up to date. What's happening with the now Commanders, who have now their 3rd name since Sonny played for them. What's going to happen as they move into the final preseason game of the year? Well, they will have some tight ends on the field but one of them won't be Logan Thomas, though Thomas, after suffering a really bad knee injury last year, much worse than first thought, 8 months later has made it back. He's been activated and is on the field practicing with the team, but is not going to play in this final exhibition game against the Baltimore Ravens on Saturday. But as far as the possibility of playing in Week 1, he says,
obviously as a competitor, yeah, I'd love to be out there Week 1. But I know myself, if I'm not ready to go or I don't feel like a full version of myself, then we can buy another week or another 2 weeks. But games are ultra meaningful, whether they're early in the season or late in the season, so I'd love to be out there.
How tough has it been watching that group? Just down to one tight end there in the preseason game.
I feel for the guys, man. It's been a grind this offseason, but no matter who's been in there has done a great job. Obviously, it's been Armani kind of taking the weight of the thing the last 2 weeks, and he's done a really good job, especially a guy who hasn't played the position before up until OTAs and training camp, and super proud of them. But all the guys have done a really good job when they've been healthy.
For you, is there an emotional lift to getting this opportunity to get you a little pep in your step as you get closer?
Yeah, after a while, it's kind of the mental thing of it. You could feel yourself getting closer and closer to the finish line, but it's just like every day starts feeling like a monotonous grind. So to change it up and have something different is definitely a little boost.
Yeah, I saw some video of him walking out on the field yesterday. He's got this huge knee brace on. I guess it's just a precaution, but he has been cleared to play. He is 31 years old, and coming back from a serious knee injury sometimes takes time. It might take a full season to get himself back to where he was, and he's not getting any younger. Remember, he came into the league as a quarterback, sat the bench the first few years before making the transition to tight end, and he's been very good. He's been a very good pickup for them. Low-cost free agent. They gave him a contract extension, and he's been a real find for them, but they got to hope that he recovers from the knee injury, because, again, that kind of injury, it often takes you a full year to get back to where you were. As far as the rest of the team, the defense, which continues to be a problem, especially on third downs. Last year, they were 31st in the league, giving up, I think, 48% on third downs against the top quarterbacks that they faced, the first-team quarterbacks the last 2 weeks. They have not forced a punt. And Ron Rivera, again, yesterday, after looking at the tape, said this.
I'd say if there's one thing that is concerned, it's the pass rush. We have to be disciplined, and we have to understand what our role is. If we have a specific call on, you're the edge guy, set the edge. Don't give up the edge, and that's probably the biggest thing that when you look at the tape, you see it, and that's the thing that frustrates and disappointing. We have to understand who we're playing against. I mean, this was probably one of the elite mobile quarterbacks that has the ability to move sideways and throw off of different platforms. I mean, we had two guys bearing down on him. He throws the ball sidearm between the two of them for a completion. And that's the frustrating part as well.
Talking, of course, about Patrick Mahomes. They are unlikely to see Lamar Jackson this week, I think. I don't know. Maybe Baltimore plays him. They seem interested in winning these preseason games. They've set the record now with 22 in a row. So maybe they put him out there, and I would think that Ron Rivera would welcome that. Even though he's not likely to play his starters, at least, get your defense looking at a quarterback who can move, can be mobile, and put some pressure on him on third down. So that'll be something to keep an eye on as to what the Ravens do with Lamar Jackson. I'm going to play a little bit the comments yesterday that were made by Kimberly Martin, who covers the league for ESPN, about the contract extension that they have yet to work out with Lamar Jackson. He's going into the last year of his rookie deal. They'd like to work something out with him, but he has been hesitant to do that. He does not have an agent, and it's a real curious thing. And I imagine he's looking for Deshaun Watson money. But you'll hear the comments of Kimberly Martin coming up. One more from Rivera, and this is on Antonio Gibson, who, if you listen to what's going on here, it's pretty apparent that Brian Robinson has won the starting running back's job, which is going to be a bonus in two ways. One, he looks more natural at that position than Gibson ever did, even though Gibson's had 2,000-yard seasons. And the other thing is that this will allow them to take advantage more of what Gibson does best. As Rivera says, he's good when you get him out in space. So he had him return a kick last week. It's very likely he'll be their number one kick returner, and he'll take on a role that maybe is similar to what J.D. McKissick has been doing, which is, I guess, part of the reason that they haven't used him in this role, which they now have the luxury of doing, that they drafted Brian Robinson. And this was Rivera asked yesterday, well, now that you're using Gibson in this way, is this something that maybe you wanted to do earlier but just weren't able to do?
When you have a guy like J.D. out there, that's really good at that portion of it. With Antonio, again, he was a 1,000-yard rusher for us last season. And with him, it's really about getting him the ball, whether he's in space or you're handing it off to him. But in space, he is pretty special. It's kind of his forte. That when he breaks it through the line and gets vertical, as far as being a runner, he can create some things. So that is something that, we've looked at, something that, we most certainly are trying to do, trying to get in his hands, the ball out in space.
And that's if you look at what Scott Turner likes to do with his offense, he likes to have guys who can do a variety of things. And the versatility that they have now even greater with Gibson, because you now have that short yardage back, that guy who can move the chains in Brian Robinson, that should open things up even more for them. So, and maybe that fumble was fortuitous in the first exhibition game, that Gibson went sort of, it seemed to be going to the doghouse, but maybe in retrospect, that was a move that they were going to make anyway, that they had seen enough of Robinson in training camp and OTAs and minicamp that they thought, okay, even though he's a rookie, he can move into the top running back spot and we can make better use of Antonio Gibson, and it does seem to be headed in that direction. One other thing, if you have not seen this, it's all over social media. It's gone viral. And poor guy, his guy's at the Yankee game last night, and he's got a hot dog and a beer. And you see him, somebody got this all on his cell phone. This is the age we live in. So if you're going to do anything unusual in a public place like a baseball game, beware that somebody's likely to be recording. So this guy pulls the hot dog out of the bun. Doesn't have any mustard on it or anything, but he pulls the naked hot dog out, and he has a straw. And he uses a straw to hollow out the hot dog. Puts a hole in the middle of it. In other words, makes a hot dog straw. He then inserts the hot dog into the beer and begins sipping his beer with the hot dog. Now, I like hot dogs. I like beer. I'm not sure I like it in that combination, but obviously he does. I can't imagine it gives the beer any special flavor or taste, but maybe it does. It's just an odd look. And, I don't know where he got the straw, because normally when you order a beer, they don't give you a straw unless he got it at the concession stand and picked up a straw for what most people use for a soda. But, if you haven't seen it yet, here's a guy just minding his own business, making the straw hot dog, watching the ball game, and now he is a viral sensation. Oh, well. Coming up, what Kimberly Martin of ESPN says about the Lamar Jackson contract. We'll do that next. It's the Andy Pollin Hour, ESPN 630.
The Andy Pollin Hour on ESPN 630, the sports capital.
We'll roll until noon today with Tony off until Friday. I will talk more about Ken Meese, who passed away yesterday, a longtime reporter and an anchor at Channel 9. Did wonderful work over the years, and a really terrific guy. If you're just jumping in your car, word is out that the Commanders are going to retire Sonny Jurgensen's number 9, and it's going to happen last game of the season when they play the Cowboys on January the 8th. Sonny is 88 years old today, so fairly good timing announcing it today, and we wish Sonny all the best. And he is, I would say, of my boyhood football heroes, he's number one, and probably the most iconic person in the history of the organization because of all the great radio work that he did for almost 40 years, and most of it right here. Sonny retired just before the start of the 2019 season. I'll get to what Kimberly Martin said about the Lamar Jackson contract, and again, it's be interesting to see if the Ravens play him on Saturday night when they play the Commanders because, it's the last exhibition game and you want to keep everybody healthy. But on the other hand, they try to win. So, it may be that they put them out there for even a half. Who knows? But Martin has some thoughts on where the Commanders, not the Commanders, but the Ravens may be heading with the Lamar Jackson contract. I wanted to point out something here from the Post, and I heard Tony mention this yesterday. I forget who he was talking to, but he said, that Maryland took the Big Ten money and have become pretty much irrelevant in sports. The money is insane. That the contract that the Big Ten has signed is going to pay the member schools $1 billion a year. It's a 7-year deal north of $7 billion. And the amount of money that's going to come into the Maryland athletic program just from television is unbelievable. It's incredible considering where we were 10 years ago when the program was in financial trouble. And this is a real bailout for this. But this is not to in any way denigrate Jerry Brewer, who is a terrific writer. And Jerry did great work as a columnist here and still does. He's now based, though, in Seattle. And when you're writing a column about sports in Washington, you can do it from another place, and there are, and it seems that Jerry generally deals with national stories. They did have him cover the Mystics playing in Seattle over the weekend, but you don't have your finger on the pulse. And Barry's Verluga is also a great writer. Jerry's a great writer, and Barry's a great writer. But Barry's here, and Barry seems to have his finger on the pulse here, and so I don't think he was prompted by what Tony said yesterday about Maryland, but he's got a column which is spot on about where the Terps are and where the program is with all this big cash coming in from the television deal that the Big Ten has made. And Barry points out that 10 years ago, Maryland was running a $4 million deficit in their athletic budget, and they were projected to reach as much as a $17 million shortfall 5 years later. So that's when they made the deal with the Big Ten. And Barry says, in the coming years, Maryland will receive $70 million annually from the Big Ten's new media rights deal. It was Wilbon who mentioned this. Yeah, the fact that they were going to get all this money because Northwestern is getting that too as a member of the Big Ten. But Maryland will get $70 million a year. So, these now money numbers that we were talking about 10 years ago, 4 million, 17 million, who cares? There's just money coming through the door like a flood. $70 million. But as Barry accurately points out, Maryland has become pretty much irrelevant in sports. Because remember this, 10 years ago, Maryland was and still is a basketball school. And in the ACC, they were still relevant as a basketball program. They would battle toe-to-toe with Duke and North Carolina. They weren't quite there, but God bless them with Gary Williams. They were scrappy, and Gary would upset them year after year. And it was great to have that as a rivalry, and it was great tradition. And I said when they went to the Big Ten, I said football is going to be a problem. And that's exactly what has happened. Football is a problem for Maryland. Now, that's not to say that Mike Locksley hasn't done a good job. They were 7-6 last year, and they won a bowl game. And he has had to take over a program that Randy Edsall totally messed up. And then DJ Durkin took over, and he got fired in a huge scandal in which a player died. So there were pieces to pick up, and Mike Locksley has done a good job of that, and he's an excellent recruiter. Had worked at Alabama and took some of the things he learned from Nick Saban and brought them here, and he's done that. But as Barry writes here in his column, college sports have two forms of currency: money and enthusiasm. Maryland's existence in the Big Ten has been worth a windfall of the former, to this point at the expense of the latter. Windfall for money, but lack of enthusiasm. And he says it's not just that since joining the Big Ten in 2014, Maryland has faced 28 conference opponents and lost 28 times. It's not just that the average score of those games has been roughly 45-13. It's that every year Maryland faces Ohio State, Michigan, Penn State, and Michigan State. In a given season, the stars aligning element would mean the Terps beat one of those traditional powers, which has happened 3 times in 8 seasons, including 2014, when the Terps' big first foray into the Big Ten included wins at both Penn State and Michigan, but the overall record in those games is 4-25. Quick, build an 8-win regular season for the Terps this year. It means going 3-0 in the non-conference games against Buffalo, Charlotte, and SMU. SMU, by the way, has been ranked in recent years. It means handling home games against Purdue, Northwestern, and Rutgers. It means winning at Indiana, and it means beating Michigan State or Ohio State at home, or winning at Penn State, Michigan, or Wisconsin. Now, how likely does any of that sound? Not really. I mean, maybe they get 7, and nowadays 6 will get you into a bowl game, but that's where they are. And they are an irrelevant football team right now. And if you project ahead, I mean, realistically, are they going to build a program that's going to be competitive with Ohio State and Michigan? I don't think so. They're kind of like a conference also ran, the way that Missouri or Vanderbilt is in the SEC, as Barry points out. Could they have a big year like Purdue once in a while? Yeah, but they're not going to be a football power. And I knew this would be a problem. And the problem in basketball is they're pretty good. They're not the conference's best, and the intensity of a rivalry has not developed with any other school in the way it developed with Duke. And I know, look, and there are people who point this out, and they're 100% correct. When Maryland was leaving the ACC, it wasn't the ACC that we all fell in love with. Because, back in the day when the ACC was at its best, you had home and homes with Duke and North Carolina and NC State and Wake Forest, and it was great. It was great. And then when they started adding all these teams like Louisville and Pitt, they decided, oh yeah, Pitt is the big rival for Maryland. No, it's not. No, it's not. And so you lost all of that. So when you were leaving the ACC, it wasn't really the ACC anymore. But at least in football, you could be more competitive. Yeah, you were going to get crushed by Clemson. And as Barry points out, when the program reached its high watermark 20 years ago under Ralph Friedgen, they were beating Clemson. Clemson wasn't Clemson yet. And there were some dents in Florida State. They weren't the powerhouse that they were when they entered the conference. So you could be more competitive, and then you could beat everybody else. An 8-win season was very realistic in the ACC. It's not in the Big Ten right now. So it's a conundrum. It's a tough place to be. It's good that you're financially solvent and you're not having to tell all these sports you have to go away, which they did. Unfortunately, they dropped a bunch of sports. But it's an irrelevant situation in a cash-rich situation. It's really, really, really strange. Speaking of cash, Lamar Jackson is going to get cash. He's going into the last year of his contract, the last year of his rookie deal, the 5th-year option that the Ravens picked up, and they would like to work out an extension. It's not that they're being cheap on this. It's just he's seemingly acting odd. He does not have an agent and does not seem really to be negotiating at this point. So Kimberly Martin used to work for the Post, now covers the NFL for ESPN, was on our morning show yesterday, and this is her take as to what's going on with Lamar.
At this point, the Ravens, they know what they have in Lamar. They have an MVP-type player. They have a player that they believe in, that they love. This community, when you watch Lamar coming out to practice, the way fans line up, the way kids are so infatuated with him. This is the kind of guy you want to see get paid. And if I'm Lamar Jackson, I don't care about Kyler Murray money. I care about Deshaun Watson money. Because you know what? Whether you think the Cleveland Browns should have paid Deshaun Watson a record-breaking, record-setting $230 million guaranteed, you could debate whether they should have, but they did. So if I'm Lamar Jackson, if I have these accolades, if I know that how we've set up this whole thing in Baltimore revolves around me, yeah, I should be paid. the way that I should be paid $50 million at least per year. He deserves that. These are the kind of guys, you talk about guys doing things the right way. Well, here's a guy who's doing it the right way. He's been at practice. He is the face of this franchise, and he is the type of player that you should continue to build around and reward financially.
So what's the problem, Kim? Why not get it done? What's the holdup in the situation?
Yeah, well, so talking to people about the Ravens, once the Deshaun Watson deal came down, I had one GM say, if I'm Lamar Jackson, I just write $230 million on a piece of paper and slide it across the table because that's my starting offer. I've had other league execs say, but the Ravens aren't the Browns. Like, they're not just going to give a guy a completely fully guaranteed contract. No one thought the Cleveland Browns or any team would give a fully guaranteed $230 million contract until a team did. There comes a point in which you might have to do things differently than you've done before for a player who we haven't seen come around like this. You know, you got to meet in the middle. Compromises, we've all done contracts. We all have had to sit through negotiations. Negotiations are not fun. Both sides have to find a workable middle, or both people feel like maybe they've given up some, but not everything. But if you are the Ravens and you do not lock up Lamar Jackson, yes, you can franchise him. You can go that route. You can do the Kirk Cousins. But do you want to? Do you want to have to go through that with this kind of player, this kind of talent? I don't think, why draft Lamar Jackson? Why set up your whole offense around Lamar Jackson? Why John Harbaugh loves Lamar Jackson? They have until week 1 to get this done, or else this is tabled as far as Lamar is concerned, and then we continue talking about Lamar's contract even after this season.
Kim, in your smart opinion, and follow me here. In your smart, no, I'm follow me because
I appreciate you saying that, Keyshawn. I appreciate that. Yeah.
In your smart opinion, though, your opinion, do you think that the rest of the league owners, management, is looking at this as saying, in the sidebar conversations down in their little hallways in West Palm Beach when they meet, don't you give that dude $230 guaranteed money because you're going to open up a door that every time somebody comes up, they're going to want fully guaranteed baseball and basketball money. Don't you do it for us other 31 owners. Do you think, in your opinion, though, that's taking place?
Well, that's why so many execs were frustrated with the Browns doing it for Deshaun Watson, because despite all the off-the-field stuff, the lawsuits, Deshaun Watson was able to get that kind of he's the guy that got that kind of record-breaking deal. The fear was that was going to create a domino effect. Now, some organizations will say, nope, we are not doing $230 million guaranteed. We're not going to do $231, don't ask. But I'm all about players getting well compensated. I'm always going to say that players they're the ones who are playing the game. And the league makes a lot of money. The owners make a lot of money off of these players. And the fact that Kirk Cousins, before Deshaun Watson, Kirk Cousins had made the most money of any quarterback over the last 5 years or so. He got a fully guaranteed deal with Minnesota. That shouldn't be the outlier. Like Deshaun Watson's deal, it's incredible financially, but we should be trending towards that, at least in my opinion, because these guys do deserve that sort of financial assurance. And you know, once injuries happen, deals that seem real nice when they're signed, all of a sudden the guys don't get the same dollar amount after an injury and stuff like that, and when they get cut. So I think that a lot of owners probably don't want to go the Deshaun Watson route, the Kyler Murray route, but this is why we have so many quarterbacks, these young quarterbacks who are going to ask for a lot of money because they deserve it.
So that's Kimberly Martin, covers the league on the Lamar Jackson strange contract negotiations. It's not like, you know, there's an agent who's meeting with ownership or the front office. It's Lamar's his own agent and doesn't seem really interested in talking. I think he may want to go the Kirk Cousins route, in which he plays this year under the last year of his rookie deal. He knows that they would franchise him next year. You could franchise him a second year, as they did with Cousins, but then it gets prohibitively expensive, and he can go where he wants to go and get, I guess, the most guaranteed money. It's so ironic to me that the one who seems to be the game changer for contracts is Deshaun Watson, who's going to be suspended for the first 11 games of the season, is undergoing counseling, and when he gets back on the field, won't have played for almost 2 years. You know, in your mind, you say, well, who's going to be the one that's going to change this? You think Tom Brady, Aaron Rodgers, somebody like that. No, it's a guy who has clear problems, who the league doesn't really know what to do with. And as soon as Cleveland found out that he wasn't going to face criminal charges, they threw the whole war chest at him. They gave him everything. And it's maybe it's indicative of the NFL that this person who is reviled certainly by women's groups, who at the very least has rung up a number of civil suits, many of them settled. I think all but one of them settled. And whatever else went on, I mean, a lot has been reported here. And he has waffled back and forth from apology to I didn't do anything wrong. And this is the guy that does it? Not the golden boy, Tom Brady? Not Aaron Rodgers, who many believe is the best to have ever done it. Maybe, we don't wait for one of the great young quarterbacks who gets the chance to do this. No, it's this guy. And that is now the benchmark that people like Lamar Jackson are shooting for. It's a strange league, There are people who refer to the NFL as this league, and you understand that when you see what's going on with these negotiations and all the other quarterback contracts that are happening in the NFL. Coming up, Ken Meese has passed away. I'll talk about that. Also, a couple of other obits to get to as we continue. Tony Kornheiser's out the next 3 days. In the next hour, I will play an interview that Bram Weinstein did yesterday with Logan Thomas as he makes his return to the field. All that's still ahead. It's the Andy Pollin Hour, ESPN 630.